Right, we're talking about building a unique community, right? The role of the Ten Commandments. It's 613 commandments to the Torah, the instruction, this covenant relationship, this partner relationship that God enters into with Abraham and the family and the lineage in Israel. And one thing we looked at already, kind of word warriors. Sunday night we're doing word warriors. So the Ten Commandments are found in, anybody? Yes, the Bible. Thank you. Participation sticker right there. Anybody more specifically? Exodus 20. Thank you. And for extra points, extra credit, where else? Deuteronomy 5. Look at y'all. Congratulations. Well done. So Exodus 20 and also Deuteronomy 5. Right before that, God talks about the purpose of that community is to be a set-apart community, a holy nation, and to be priestly. They're to be priestly. There were priests among the nation, but they as a nation were to be priest-like. In other words, because they have the presence of Yahweh, Lord God, in a world where all these other people groups claim to have their gods, what does it look like to be exclusively a people that gathers around Yahweh, right? So that makes the holy. They're uniquely different, not because they're better or, more elite or prettier or whatever. It's because they exclusively have Yahweh that claims to be holy. And then they are, because of that special connection with God, they are to then be intercessors between God and a broken humanity and God, right? And how do we do that? Were they to do that? How were they to reflect that exclusive presence of Yahweh? Well, the Ten Commandments played a role in it. The commandments, the temple that represented the tabernacle, and then later the temple represented the presence of God. They had priests that were to intercess between them. They had the law. And so the Ten Commandments are kind of the heart of it, right? The heart of it. And we've been covering them. We are in Commandment number 9. Commandment number 9. Number 9. Well, okay, one more reminder. Remember, of the Ten Commandments, the first 4 have to do with exclusively their interaction with God. And then the next 6 are about their interaction with each other as a people group, right? And we are looking at all these layers that the commandments have as we go deeper into it. So, commandment number 9 is, you shall give no false testimony against your neighbor. If you go there, Deuteronomy, I think it has the word witness. Do not bear false witness. Well, just like the previous one, you shall not steal, I think it means what it says, right? Don't give false testimony. In other words, don't lie. So at the most superficial level, of course, it's talking about honesty. Hopefully you understand the importance of honesty in relationships, right? If you're not honest, if you don't have honesty, if you're about deception and lies and then lacks truth, of course, and no trust, you cannot have good relationships. You cannot have deep relationships. You cannot have intimate relationships. So all that's implied, and then there's a bunch of proverbs that we could have gone to, which we won't, that talks about don't lie. God is very intense about dishonesty, because I assume and hope all understand the importance of that layer of it. Let's look at a few more details. If we just move a little to Exodus 23. So once again, here is God unfolding these 613 between Exodus, and they come in kind of spurts, right? There's different moments that the parts of these laws are given. And here, and then Deuteronomy, and you just kind of put all that together. you have the 613. Here in chapter 23, starting in verse 1. Do not spread false reports. Right? Once again, we're trying to build a unique community that's going to reflect unto a broken world what it looks like to do humanity through the exclusive presence of God. Part of that is do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the crowds in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd. And do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. Okay, you're already starting to get to a little more to a different depth here. The thing isn't just be honest. It has to do with how we treat others. It's really a broader sense in the broader sense, it's talking about justice. The same thing with the do not steal. It's layers of justice. Now, is that not a hot topic in our world today? Are we not seeing versions of how that is not done right? Are we not seeing consequences of when that in the past was not dealt with right? I mean, so justice is an important part of a unified community, of a community that is in harmony, in peace, that is thus reflecting unto a very broken and vicious, intense, and aggressive world what it looks like to do it right. So justice, verse 4. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to return it. I don't know how often that happens to you. Where we live out there in Piedmont, it's almost out in the farm. You might see some animals wandering around. But once again, look past the cultural setting, right? This is talking about honesty. Honesty. And not just honesty for the sake of my self-worth, but for relationships that are done justly. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. Well, but the guy hates me. Can't I just laugh and, be like, yeah, there you go, get what you deserve? Well, first of all, poor donkey, right? But that's a whole different layer there. Why would I help somebody in my community that hates me? Because I am being a person of honesty. I'm being a person of truth. I'm being a person that validates the importance of true relationships, regardless of what other people are doing. So I'm going to be a person that looks for justice in that moment, not just for my own self, for my own benefit. Verse 6, do not deny justice to the poor in their lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge, and do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. So God here is putting a heavy thumb on it. It's so important to him that we do relationships honestly, that to lie about somebody's guilt and thus put them in a death penalty. In other words, you're participating in spinning the truth. You're participating in, of course, to some benefit. Otherwise, why do you go around just randomly, accusing somebody? So there's some benefit you're perceiving out of that. Maybe you don't like the person. Maybe you're scheming with the majority. He talks about don't follow the majority when they're not being truthful. Yeah, we could go to so many modern examples, which I really will bite my tongue and not. But make your own applications, right? You cannot just go with the flow. You cannot just go with the crowds. You cannot just go with, whatever the majority is saying if it's not true. Why? Because it's not just some philosophical concept of truth versus, lies. It's about relationships. Do we not get fake news out there? Is the internet nothing but truth? Yeah, thank you. Come on, right? I mean, no, it's, man, conspiracy theory galore and, fake news and all kinds of spinning and other, bad actors out there on the political international front feeding us lies. Why? Because it destabilizes community. That's the end goal of it, or that's the end result of it. It destabilizes community. And even back here, he emphasizes some things regarding the poor. Right? The poor have little bargaining. They have little to pressure on. They have very little momentum. They have zero political influence. They're like the distraught, the downtrodden, the forsaken, the ignored of society. Don't allow that to validate your lack of justice. Their standing in society is irrelevant in terms of you being truthful, you being bearing good witness, you telling the truth, regardless of people's social status. Verse 7, have nothing to do with a false charge. Okay, then do not put the innocent to death. Why? Because God will hold you accountable. And if you are being a community that claims to reflect the exclusive presence of God, you better take that serious. You're going to go do whatever else. You're going to claim whatever other gods. You're going to do humanity, whatever other versions are out there. Go ye and good luck. But if you're going to claim to be the exclusive presence of God, if you're entering this covenant relationship with God, and then you got to understand the importance of it, because you are also bearing witness of God unto the world. So when he talks about don't bear false witness, he's not just meaning, once again, honesty. He's talking about what are you truly reflecting? What are you being a witness of unto the world? And if you deny justice, if you lie about people's guilt or innocence, if you just, go with the political flow and just to get, things happening that is unjust, you're bearing false witness of who God is. So there's layers of this here. Verse 8, do not accept a bribe, for a bribe binds those who see and twists the words of the innocent. Do not oppress okay, stop there. Bribes. I don't know. I should ask Barry sometime how common this is here. Brazil, sadly, it's way too common. Way too common. I know a good friend in Brazil there that, in Brazil, like, you get pulled over a lot, like, especially on a highway. Highway patrol pulls people over all the time. They even sometimes have like checkpoints, right? And so this friend of mine, he'd get pulled over, I don't know, a lot. And so they'd ask for your registration, your ID and all that. So sadly, too often that's for bribes. They pull you over and make up some reason. So he would just put money within his little document, where he has his registration and stuff, and just hand that there. He said, couple times, and all the times it happened, it came back with the money. All the other times, the money, and then they're like, well, yeah, well, have a good day, and then all of a sudden, whatever the problem was, is gone. I was president, what would we call, like homeowners association? Is that a president? Whoever's in charge of that. I was that for a couple of years where we lived in Brazil. And we had to do we had this intercom system that it's a small little community, but we had an intercom system that connected all the houses. And so it just had the builder started it, then finish it. So I got 3 quotes from 3 different companies to finish the project. All 3 of them offered me a bribe. All 3 of them. So sadly, way too common then, and I hope it's not very common here, but it should not be. Why should it not be? Because a bribe is already about distorting the truth. It's already about you favoring somebody for that benefit at the cost of somebody else. Once again, you understand it's not just about honesty for honesty's sake. It's about community. And then it's impressive to me how often, especially as you read through the Old Testament, how often it addresses Israel's relationship with non-Israelites. So verse 9, do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners because you were foreigners in Egypt. And often that's the reason attached. Leviticus 19 talks about it too. We'll read that a little bit here. Treat non-community members special. Treat them, in Leviticus they'll even say, love the foreigner that resides among you as if a native born. And his point is, because you have lived in a community where, because you were not part of that community, you were oppressed. Which, I don't know, how are you not part of a community that you've been a part of for 400 years? I mean, it's like saying whatever whatever ethnicity you have 200-300 years back in your family line means you're not an American. Like, who would be left besides Native Americans, right? And nobody else is an American because you somehow 300 years ago didn't live here. We would think that absurd. So the Israelites were 400 years in Egypt, 430, the last 100 of those or so, they were being oppressed because they were not, quote unquote, like everybody else. Because you've experienced the horrendousness of that, don't you dare show any layer of that unto other communities, especially because the purpose for you being a community of God or a kingdom of God is in great part to intercede between God and a broken humanity. So how are you going to treat them wrong and somehow get them to be interested in God, in Yahweh God? So it's very important that their relationship with non-Israelites be one that was done, mind-blowing, out of the common for that world. And I would dare say would be quite a breath of fresh air if we did some of that now. Treat those that do not look like us or quote unquote are Americans or any version of that. We should treat them special because we're claiming to represent something more. Listen, whatever America does, I'm not in charge of any of that. But we're talking about what the community of faith, those that claim to have God, should be doing. I think that is then very pertinent to us. Leviticus 19. We've read parts of this almost every couple classes, but it's important because it's a summary of a lot of things here. Leviticus 19. And Leviticus was specially focusing on the importance of the priests. So within Israel there was priests, but not just what they were to do as their priestly duties, but there's a broader sense here for Israel because Israel also was to be priestly towards other nations. So Leviticus 19, let's go to verse 15 to 21. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. Once again, that is honesty. That is you treating people with honesty. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. That is you being dishonest. What is slander? Anybody got any synonyms? What does it mean to be slandering other people?
Telling somebody else a lie about another person.
Yeah, it's not even you just lying to the person themselves. It's you lying. It's like me sharing with Barry something about one of you and lying about you and trying to slant his understanding of you towards the wrong, towards the negative, towards the lie. So it's not just slandering, it's not just lying, it's trying to get other people on board with that misinformation. Once again, is none of that happening today? Have you watched the news or social media or, or just about turned on the TV? Well, we're trying to get people to believe the slant that we propose about other people or other groups. What's always fascinating to me is how politics is just the same thing with different names. So whoever's president, the other party, the minority is just, they just go at it, right? Just go at it. Like before even day one, right? Just go at it. Okay, and then those that are in power, like, oh, this is so wrong, and this is, slandering, all kinds of stuff. And like, oh, yeah. And you can relate with something. You're like, yeah, that's not right. Okay, when you switch power, the exact same thing. The exact same thing. And you're just like, can nobody see it? Can nobody see it? Or they don't care. Or who knows what else, right? But I don't know if you've noticed, I don't have fond feelings about politics. I know it's subtle, but it's there. So I've had to disconnect with a lot of that because it was just making me unhappy. And even more cynical than God already blessed me with. So then he just gets even more generic, more generic. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's wife. That's also important. Do not endanger your neighbor's wife. That gets complicated. Do not endanger your neighbor's life. English is not my first language, so bear with me. Why not? Because I am the Lord. In other words, he's reminding, I am Yahweh. I am your God, and you have entered an exclusive relationship with me. That's why you're not going to do these things. Otherwise, go be whatever else out there. You can find whatever community you want to be. Go be that. But you accepted to be this. Verse 17, do not hate your fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly. So there's another layer of honesty. So you will not share in their guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because I am the Lord. Verse 19, keep my decrees. Do not mate. No, let's stop there. That gets complicated. Okay, so Leviticus here once again is summarizing a lot of these commandments, right? The idea of do not lie and do not steal and like a lot of different things, but it's applying it in a more relational sense because that's really what it's about. If you're going to be a priestly people or going to be a priestly nation, you have to treat each other in ways that reflect your interaction and presence of God. Let's go to Deuteronomy 19. Deuteronomy 19, verse 15 to 21. Verse 15 to 21. Talking about witnesses again. This is why you don't want to bear false witness. Because here's how they were going to do justice, right? Today you have like DNA and you got all this CSI. Anybody watch any of those? There's a handful of them. CSI and you like all these, special kind of lab efforts and so forth. Okay. None of that was the case then. And so often how was crime dealt with? Well, witnesses. And the punishments were often severe unto death. So in a community where that's the case, witnesses bear quite an important role in it. So here's how justice was. Here's the process. Verse 15. One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of any crime or offense they have made committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. You might think that's unfair. Yet once again, in a world where you don't have, all that technology and you can't do a DNA, if I don't like you, I can make up stuff about you and then you can be put to death. So we're not going to take one witness. Not that it wouldn't be investigated or whatever, but we just can't convict folks on one witness, so we got to have more. Verse 16. If a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse someone of a crime, the two people involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priest and the judges who are in the office of the time. So, when this whole process here of justice is going on, who's involved? Well, the two parties, right? Whatever crime is being claimed there, the witnesses. And then you have the priests. Well, why priests? What do they have to do with crime? It's a modern world concept where we separate things like justice and faith. Or we separate things like events of the natural world. Like, I don't know, there's seismic activity or there's lightning or, here you got a hailstorm or something. And some kind of divine intervention. In the ancient world, it's all one thing. It's all interconnected somehow. So, of course, you're going to have representatives of God in a moment of justice, even criminal justice, because the issues at hand there have to do with relational dysfunction, which is the premise of what God is trying to fix or to represent differently or better. So then there's the priest, then there's also the judges who are going to participate in the deciding process. Who else is there? Yahweh, Lord God. Now, I don't think he's like, standing there. I don't think they have like a picture of him. But God is participating in justice. Why? Because God cares about justice or, injustice. So then, verse 18. The judge must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against a fellow Israelite, then do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party. Wouldn't that make things different? If you were lying to get somebody killed, somebody like executed, that's where it's going to go for you. Or whatever other versions of the punishment. Why? Why should we do this? This is intense. Can't we just perjury or something, right? You're lying, or I don't know, you go sit in jail a couple nights. Here's why. You must purge the evil from among the people. Does God take seriously the idea of truth? Of lying? Of bearing false witness? He calls it an evil among the people. In other words, it's a communal issue. It's not just somebody lied. It's infecting community. It is making community harder to deal with. You cannot be a good community if you have lies. Once again, so many examples come to mind of our modern times, but hopefully you're making some of those connections on your own. Verse 20. The rest of the people will hear of this, and once again, here's that communal impact, and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity. Life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for a foot. What is he talking about? He's not even talking about the crime. That's not even being addressed yet. He's talking about those lying about somebody's guilt. They intended harm, harm will come to them. They intended death, death will come to them. That's the seriousness of it here. Once again, the crime's not even, whatever crime, it's not even being addressed yet. It's talking about the process. Isn't that part of the complaint out there, that our justice system isn't always just? If people lose confidence in the justice system, welcome to part of the messes that we have today, right? And whatever, look, the validity of that or not, I'll let you decide, but that is a thing. If the justice system isn't just, community cannot be community. And if people lie to get their whatever, their politics, revenge, and who knows what else, It is a community that is infected with an evil that must be purged. Once again, strong wording. I don't even know. Is it lying to the courts, a misdemeanor? It might not even be an intense thing today. This is serious. This is serious. Let's go to the New Testament to make a point here that connects with Jesus. Acts chapter 1. So Jesus is claiming to be humanity done right? He's like, if you read Matthew's account, Matthew intentionally starts his account by using the Greek word for Genesis. Right? The genealogy of Jesus, chapter 1, verse 1, verse 1, 18, chapter 1, 18. Verse 18, it says the birth of Jesus. Okay, that's in English. Those two words in Greek are the words for Genesis. So Matthew wants his Jewish audience that knows all about the backstory, right, the Hebrew Bible, to understand that whatever Jesus is has to do with Genesis, which is about the beginning of humanity. So Jesus is humanity done right. Then as you continue through Matthew there, Matthew's intentionally going to also make a parallel between Jesus and Israel, where Jesus is Israel done right. Okay? And so those two things put together, and then Jesus beating death on the cross, which puts things together with Daniel, Ezekiel, some trippy stuff going on there. But basically, both Daniel and Ezekiel are having these dreams and visions about a cosmic battle between these beastly creatures that represent the pagan evil nations, where evil's behind all that, and they're just eating at each other, right? They're just kind of thing, which is welcome to history. And then there is one that is representing humanity, one like the Son of Man, which is, spoiler alert, Jesus. And Jesus goes against these cosmic creatures that are eating each other. And then out of all that comes this dragon-looking character. Has all these horns, it's really intense. Okay, or we translated dragon. It's a serpent. It's a serpent creature. Where in the Bible have we seen the serpent creature? All right, it's like Genesis 3. And what did God say would happen to a descendant of Eve, right? So a descendant of humanity and a descendant of the snakely creature. They would be at odds with each other, and he would crush the head of the serpent while the serpent would bite the heel, and he would win over the serpent creature at his own death. That's what that verse is saying. So then Daniel, in a time where Babylon is oppressing Israel, so they understand the whole nation, crushing nation, he has this vision where one, like the Son of a Man, one human, is going against this massive snakely creature. And the snakely creature crushes the human-looking champion. And then Daniel's like, and the one that's there's an angel who explains, just hold on, bud. That's my translation. Because then out of death comes that human champion back alive. And from that moment in the vision, he is now gathering unto himself a people that will outlast all these beastly creatures. Okay, come on. Jesus, right? So Jesus on the other side of the resurrection is bitten by the serpent as he crushes the serpent, right? So death is the cost, yet through his death he's victorious when he's resurrected, and now unto himself he's gathering a new humanity that will survive all these beastly kingdoms. Why? Because we're not a political institution. Please stop making faith a political institution. You with me? It is not a political party. You are sucking the life of it. You are contaminating it. You are setting it up here to be another beastly kingdom that inevitably will be destroyed if that's what you do to it. It must be something that is gathered around the presence of God and Jesus, not politics. Okay, so, all right. Acts chapter 1, Jesus has been resurrected. He spends 40 days with the disciples, kind of connecting the dots. He's about to go back to his royal throne where he will kind of rule cosmically until all these, the remnant of humanity, of a broken humanity, gathers unto himself, okay? And as he's about to do that, the disciples are still being very patriotic. And they ask Jesus, is it at this time that you're going to make Israel great again? If I can borrow a phrase. And Jesus says, don't worry about that. God's got something. They have political Israel in mind. God's got that. Here's what you need to be about. And then here's the verses that I think are relevant to us. Verse 6. It is not for you to know the times and dates the Father has set by his own authority. Talking about political Israel, which, by the way, didn't turn out well. 37 years after this moment, Israel, as a political institution, beastly kingdom, which Israel eventually becomes a beastly kingdom, is destroyed by another beastly kingdom, Rome, and, it's just a mess. Okay, so don't worry about that. Verse 8. But you, this new gathered humanity, this new kingdom of heaven, here's what you need to do. You're going to receive power from up high, the Holy Spirit. In other words, God will be with you, and you will be my witnesses. So when it says don't bear false witnesses, once again, it's not just lying. Don't go out and misrepresent what this new kingdom in Jesus is really all about. That's happening today. Folks using, and I'll put this very generic and within quotes, Christianity, and misrepresenting what Christ really is all about. You know what I'm talking about? I won't give examples, but they're bearing false witness because we were called to be a witness. A witness, in other words, you could use the word priestly there. We are called to represent, to witness unto a broken world what God is. So you have seen me, these disciples. You have been with me. You have heard me. You have watched me. You have seen me deal with the beastly kingdoms and the mess and the oppression and the hatred and the racism and the violence, which was all part of what led Jesus to the cross. The corruption, the bribes, the backstabbing. You've seen me deal with all that. Uniquely different the way he dealt with all that. Now, I want you to go represent that to the world. But don't do that falsely, is what the Ten Commandments is connecting to this point. And you're going to go to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, which was a place where the Jews and the Samaritans had a racially tense feud that had been going on for 700 years. You're going to go to them, and then you're going to go to the rest of the world. In other words, you're going to go to the brokenness out there. You're going to go to the brokenness out there. John 8. We got 5 minutes. John 8. Jesus is interacting with the religious leaders of Israel, which were the priests. They were the political elites of Israel. They were supposed to be intercessors between Yahweh and Israel and Yahweh. So they're supposed to represent or bear witness of God unto Israel, right? Okay, that's their job. What are they bearing witness of? Well, Jesus thinks this, chapter 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. In other words, I am bearing witness of Jesus, of God. Whoever follows the light will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Here's the Pharisees. They challenged him. Here you are appearing as your own witness. You're appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Hey, you're supposed to have 2 or 3 people witness on behalf of you. So there's a whole playing of words here going on. And the irony of it is, I think, lost too often in English. But here's what Jesus says. As if you are witnessing about God, here's what you are witnessing about. Let's move down a little bit. To your own law, hang on. Verse 44. That's what I wanted to look. Verse 44. You belong to your father. Oh, God? Yahweh? You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desire. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. Where he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. And you, religious leaders of Israel who have the job to bear witness of God, you are really bearing witness of the devil. I think that's intense. How's that feel for like the, social justice Jesus? Let's just hug folks and get along with everybody. Very intense. So Jesus is saying you are bearing false witness. You're representing the devil, not God. So when you and I lie, fuel misinformation, slander, and gossip, give false testimony, and the variety of all that, what you and I are doing are then in fact reflecting the devil, not God. Because what all those things do is break communities. God is trying to make a united community based on truth, trust, and so forth. And finally, let's conclude here. I think we got a minute here. Here's part of what we're to be witnessing unto the world. John chapter 13. Jesus here is looking at the cross now. He's but a few hours away. One of his has gone to betray him. The whole corruption thing is set in motion. The beastly kingdoms are doing their beastly things. And here's what Jesus wants his new humanity to be about. His representatives of this new humanity. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. In other words, if you treat people with love, you are bearing witness of what God is. If you lie, if you cheat, if you steal, if you commit adultery and all the other negative things, if you false testimonies, if you gossip, you are bearing witness of evil, not of God. You want to be known for being quote-unquote Christian, which is Christ. You understand the first time Christian was used, it was a condescending term there in Antioch. It was not a positive thing. Okay? You want to make it a positive thing, it is by loving others, as Jesus came to love us. So don't bear false witness.